So the Southern Summit here in Valdosta, Georgia is an edification seminar for every age. We have child care, teenager, women, men, preachers, preachers with elders, preachers without elders. This year our theme is lead, and so we're learning how to lead in various different ways of our life, even in our vocation. So even if you're not a preacher, you're not, quote, a Bible class teacher or something like that, this is an edification seminar just for you here in Valdosta, Georgia, the Southern Summit.
Preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine. The Moultrie Church of Christ hosts a yearly event at the Rainwater Conference Center in Valdosta, Georgia, featuring over 10 speakers, and they have something for everyone. Teen classes, ladies classes, and a keynote speaker lineup you will not want to miss. Filmed on location by the Gospel Broadcasting Network, which proudly brings you the Southern Summit.
Hallelujah, thine the glory, revive us again.
It began on a Monday morning. I walked into the office as I typically do. I had my stainless steel Yeti mug that my youngest son gave me a couple of years ago as a gift. I had it filled to the brim with Seattle's best, number 5 Henry's Blend. If you've not tried that, you need to. The best coffee in the world, and it's only coffee. It's not polluted. Some of you folks may put, I don't know what that stuff is, sand, sawdust, fluff and stuff. I'm not sure what all, but it's just coffee. My wife drinks that stuff. It looks like creek water. I don't know what all she puts in it. But I sat down in my good soft chair at work. Boss man walks by and he says, "Well, Kev," he said, "this one looks like a good one for you." He hands me what's called an incident report. And the officer has done a fantastic job. He's filled in all the blanks and got a detailed narrative in the narrative. He's wrote out what has happened. This report is a burglary report, and a basic definition of burglary in the state of Georgia is if someone unlawfully, that means without permission, without authority, comes into your house or your dwelling, an outbuilding, out back, without permission, he's committed the act of burglary. If he has an intent to commit a theft, that was the type of report this was. And I read over this report, and as I was sitting there enjoying my Henry's Blend number 5, I noticed that it was in one of our higher-end neighborhoods. These are high-priced houses where this took place. So I looked in the narrative, and the narrative basically said that this family of 4, mom and dad, 2 young teenage boys, I think maybe 13 or 14, years of age, had gone on vacation. They'd been gone about 7 days, 6 or 7 days. When they had left, they had secured their home. Everything was fine. They come back, and his dad pulls in the driveway. He notices at the front door, and they don't have a regular door. They got one of these super wide doors that's got the glass on the side, and he noticed that part of it was broken out. Well, as any good dad would do, or good mom, he backed out of the driveway and pulled across the street from a safe distance while his wife was dialing 911. Well, it wasn't but 2 or 3 minutes, a couple of our patrol units showed up, pulled into the driveway, got out, weapons drawn, went in, made entry, and what we call they cleared the house. Bad guys was gone. One of the officers comes to the front door. He motions them to come across the street. They drive into their driveway. They go in the house. They do a quick inventory of the things that's been taken. Mother's jewelry is missing. Dad had one of these plastic water jugs in his bedroom with a lot of coins, about $200, maybe $150, $200 was taken. And the 2 boys had these Xbox things, these games. Well, their 2 Xbox control units was taken, and all of their Xbox games, and the boys was upset. But the perpetrators didn't make a mess of the house, which happens a lot of times. They just closed the door and left. Well, as I started over to this neighborhood to investigate this crime, I drove into the neighborhood, and any good detective will always began to look for what I like to call the Gladys Kravitz of the neighborhood. Now, some of you are smiling because you know who I'm referring to. On that television show called Bewitched, Gladys Kravitz was the neighbor of Darren and Samantha Stevens. And a bird could not land in Samantha and Darren's tree without her seeing it, without her knowing it. And she knew what kind of bird it was, and she'd watch how long it stayed there. Nosy neighbor. We love nosy neighbors. Well, I pull into, and it's a huge cul-de-sac, and I pulled in, and right there on the right-hand side was, I noticed a vehicle was in the driveway, and I thought, well, I'll just start here. Well, I pulled in, and about the time I pulled up, I seen a head pop up in the door window, and I thought, well, that's a pretty good sign. And I got out and walked up, and I was dressed appropriately, and I had my badge clipped on and everything, and I walked up and introduced myself, gave her one of my cards, and told her why I was there, and she said, I knew it. She said, last Tuesday, I was watching The Price is Right, and she said there was a green 1990 model Ford pickup truck. She said, it come down there, and it don't belong in this neighborhood. I said, slow down, Mrs. Kravitz. Give me just a minute. And she said, it wasn't one of them long ones. She said, it was short. I said, yes, ma'am, that's a short bed. And she said, it didn't have no hubcaps. I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, it was a white man, and he was by himself, and he was bushy-headed. I said, Mrs. Kravitz, you're my new best friend. I was writing all this down, and she said, he wasn't back there 10, 15 minutes, and said, here he come. I seen him when he come out. And she said, I'll tell you something else. She said, if this kind of business starts up in our neighborhood, I'm calling the chief. She said, we're going to have to get us a neighborhood watch over here. And I thought, Mrs. Kravitz, we just need to put you on payroll. That's what we need to do. Y'all don't need a neighborhood watch. You're it. But I didn't tell her that. Well, I went back to the office. And one thing that puzzled me, I said, Mrs. Kravitz, of course that wasn't her name. I said, how do you know that was a, I said, most women don't know the difference between a 90 model, and some women do. And I said, Ford, F-150. She said, well, my second husband, she said, he had one like that, and it was white. And she said, I just remember. Said his was long. Said he was a painter. Said he had them ladders on there. She said, I just remember that. And I said, okay. I wrote all that down. But anyway, I go back to the office, and I sat down. And back in the day, when we wanted to check pawn shops, we either had to call, and that wasn't always the best thing. Best thing to do is go look. We'd have to go look at all the pawn shops in town to see if some of this stuff had been pawned. Nowadays, it's online. So I went back and sat down in my chair, and I fired up the computer, and all the pawn shops is in an agreement where they can get a business license. They got to photograph everything they're taking on pawn, photograph the ID of the person, photograph the person, and write down all necessary information. Well, it's just right there at my fingertips. Well, I started looking, and I found about 2 hours what I had determined was the time, because I checked out The Price is Right when it came on. About 2 hours later, Xboxes was pawned. Jewelry was pawned. Well, I pulled the fellow's picture up, and there he is. Well, I looked at his address, and I printed all that off on our colored printer, and I drove to that address. Well, guess what was sitting in the driveway? A green, short bed, 1990 model Ford pickup truck, no hubcaps. I just photographed that thing with my phone from the road. And I went on. We got away looking up phone numbers. I got back to the office, and I called, and the lady of the house answered. I told her who it was, and I said, I need to see so-and-so. Well, what's this about? And I said, well, I'll talk to him about that. I said, now, he can come see me. I'll make this easy. I said, I'm fat and old and gray-headed. I said, I'm not going to chase nobody. I said, just tell him to come see me. Well, about 30 minutes, he walked in. Of course, she came with him. She sat in the lobby, and he walked in. He sat down, and I said, are you so-and-so? He said, I am. I said, well, listen, before we start talking, I said, you got the right to remain silent. I said, anything that you say can be held against you in court. I said, you have the right to speak to an attorney before I talk to you. And I said, but if you give up that right to remain silent, I said, you can still stop answering questions at any time. I said, do you understand? He said, oh, yeah, I understand. I said, sign right here. Of course, my tape recorder was running. He signed, and I told him what I was investigating, and he lied and lied and lied some more. And when he got through lying, I said, well, okay. I showed him the pictures of what he had pawned. I showed him a picture of his truck. I told him about Mrs. Kravitz. Of course, I didn't tell him who she was and all that. And he just dropped his head. And he began to stare maybe around the base of my desk. He was sitting across the desk from me. And I seen that glare, seen it 1,000 times. And somebody says, well, that don't matter. Justice prevail. Good job, Sutton. Good job. Really? Really? You see, that man sitting across my desk has just turned 17. And somebody says, well, so? Let me tell you what I've been doing for 38 years. And this doesn't make me special. Not at all. But I've been asking this question. I started noticing stuff like this when I was a teenager. And by the age of 19, I started the profession that I'm doing, and I've been asking a question for a long time. I said, son, and listen, I knew what he was going to say before he said it. I said, son, where's your daddy? Look, real tears began to fall on his gray T-shirt. I remember it like it was yesterday. I waited a little while, and I said, son, where's your daddy? I knew what he was going to say. He said, I don't know. I said, do you ever see him? He said, once, twice a year. I said, how long has he been gone? He said, Mama said he left right after I was born. I reached over in my desk drawer and I pulled out what we call the inmate committal form. I got to fill it out. It takes about 2 minutes. Jail won't accept him without it. Who he is, who I am, what he's done. I'll be taking the charges. There's a uniformed officer down the hall sipping on a cup of coffee. I call him in. See, in Georgia, when you're 17, you don't go home with mama. 16, in a case like that, 16, we do what's called a Form 90, F-O-R-M 90. We fill that out, and the juvenile court sends it to that address in about 3 to 4 months, and they bring him up there and give him about 6 months probation. He might pick up a few tin cans on the side of the road. In 6 months, it kind of goes away. When you're 17, you get handcuffed, you get put in the back of the police car, you get fingerprinted, you get mug shot, you're hauled off to the county jail, and your name's in the newspaper. And that boy's record is basically scarred for the rest of his life. And 1 million more just like him. Officer comes in, I hand him the inmate committal form, he stands him up, handcuffs him behind his back, leads him down the hall, right out through the lobby. Mama cries. She sees her baby loaded up in that car, and away they go. She comes in, sits down, and she said, can you tell me where I went wrong? I said, ma'am, you probably didn't go wrong. She said, I've worked 2 jobs, basically his whole life, just to keep a roof over our head and fed. I said, good for you, ma'am. I said, is there a daddy in the picture? And she said, nah. I said, does he ever see him? She said, once, twice a year. She just cried. I shed a tear. It's been said that the 3 sweetest words in the English language is home, heaven, and mother. I don't guess us guys even contend for that. And when poets and songwriters write about the sweetness of home, it seems to me they always turn and always write about motherhood. And while mothers deserve all the credit they can get, God bless mothers, what would we do without them? But why does it seem that there's not so much of that stuff talked about us guys, us daddies, and us granddaddies? Why is that? Is it because we don't deserve it? Or is it because maybe we're not as involved in the lives of our children maybe as we should be? I think that may be more the case. Studies of male prisoners in the United States have shown this to be true. The number one most thing they have in common is the absence of the father in the home. Number one. When working in law enforcement, one of the things that goes with our job is from time to time we get to know some of these inmates. We call them runarounds. Television calls them trustees. We call them runarounds. They run around washing their cars and cleaning their bathrooms. You know, the ones that we let out that's low threat. Lock them up at night and they work during the day. And occasionally when we get to know one of these, some of these guys around Mother's Day will ask to borrow a couple of dollars. Why? Well, they want to send their mother a Mother's Day card. You know how many guys have asked me to borrow a couple of dollars to buy a Father's Day card? Can you say none? Why? They ain't got one. And if that says anything to us fathers, it says that we play a significant role in the lives of our children. Daddies, listen to me. We play a significant role in the lives of our children. And daddies, I believe it's really simple. I do. Listen, daddies, our children need our attention. And we need theirs. And when our children are on the ball field or cooking a cupcake, if they say, "Look, Daddy," there needs to be somebody there looking. And it needs to be us. Always has been, always will be. Whether it's at school or at play or wherever it is. And listen, I know our kids are going to go to school and our grandkids, and they're going to they're going to have their friends, and they're going to have who they call their best friend, and they should. But daddies, you should be number one in the lives of your children, their absolute best friend, even above the mothers. Daddies, you're it. We're the number one in the line of the defense of Satan. And I'm talking about godly captains. Nobody should rival our friendship that we have with our children. And I'm not talking about just being their friend. We got to be their daddies. Discipline comes into play, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But they got to know when it's crunch time, and when everything in this world in their lives is going down the drain, there's somebody that's going to be standing there in the fire for them and with them. And it's me and you. God has placed us as captains of our ship, our home. And sometimes men that don't, they need to start acting like it. That's not acting that way. And I'm speaking of godly captains. And when we do that, our wives, ladies, they need to step up and support that. That's what our wives need to do. Now let me give you a couple of disclaimers. I know of fine Christian couples, men and women who've raised their children right from all accounts, and they chose the world. Brethren, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees. Somebody may be thinking about Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he'll not depart from it. Brethren, that's a proverb. That's not a 100% guarantee. Satan, prince of this world, disguises himself as an angel of light. Powerful. And there's probably not a congregation represented here that hasn't suffered casualties because of that, from families that are solid and sound. I get that. It can happen. Another disclaimer is just because a young person doesn't have a good, godly father example, and we're talking about leading today. Leading. Listen, brother, it starts at home. You want to know how strong the congregations are? It's exactly as strong as the members of the church, the families that's part of that congregation, that make up that congregation. Doesn't matter if it's elders or deacons or the preacher, whoever, the families. If they're weak, the church is weak. If they're strong, the church is strong. But a young person doesn't have an excuse if their daddy was not right, was not there. I met a gospel preacher not too long ago, fine gospel preacher. He said, I had the sorriest daddy in the world. He said, but me and mama made it. I said, amen, brother. If you have your Bibles, turn to Matthew 17 if you'd like to. If you don't, I'm going to read it for you. Matthew 17, we're going to begin with verse 14, go through 18. Let's look at a story about a good daddy, a good father. Matthew 17:18. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son. For he is an epileptic and suffers severely, for he often falls in the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Wonderful story. Primarily, this story tells how Jesus miraculously heals a boy who suffers from epileptic-type seizures. But behind the scenes, I believe this is a father that we can look at and model. This story is also found in Mark 9 and Luke 9, if you're interested in that, about this father. Listen, gentlemen, we don't know his name. We don't know where he comes from, or we don't know what he did for a living. But you know what? It doesn't matter. If it had mattered, the Holy Spirit would have had this recorded. But what does matter on this occasion that sets him apart as a father who's worthy of our imitation. That's the case. Now, let's notice four things about this father. I want us to notice four things. Number one, the father was there for his son. Now, we don't know if he was always there for his son because we only have this one isolated scene. But as the story indicates, his son had seizures. And he often would have one and fall in fire or water. So the father had apparently seen this and was present, and he was involved in his the life of his son. And daddies, listen to me. Is that not the number one craving that our families have for us? That we be present? That when we come home, we're at home. And we leave work at work. And we get off of that couch. Used to would say get up out from behind that newspaper. But now, get off of that internet and get away from that television and get into the lives of your children. And if they're in their bedroom, knee-deep in Xbox, get them out of there. We need to be involved in the lives of our children. Listen, gentlemen, we only get one shot. I remember when Jake come through the doors, being held by a female doctor. And now we're here. Gentlemen, we only get one shot. We got to get off of that couch. Oh, well, Brother Sutton, you don't understand. I work night shift. Okay. Lord expects us to work. And I can't hardly spend any. You got to stay there? Well, I make 50 more cents on the hour. Okay. I don't ever see my kids, but do you have to stay there? Maybe there's another job. And I'm not claiming I got all the answers on that, brethren, but I think I do, but I'll just save that for another day. You may just have to switch jobs. Brethren, your children are counting. Daddies, your children are counting on you. They may not say it or they may not know it, but listen, you know that. And I know I'm probably speaking to God's best today, right here today, but maybe there's somebody at home watching right now that needs to hear this, not because it's for me, but it's just right. This is right. Daddies, what if I could tell you that there's a way that you could guarantee that your children will be 5 times less likely to commit suicide? Would you be interested? You know, there's not much left in law enforcement that just gets my adrenaline. I mean, there's a few things. And there's not much more that bothers me. But you go to one of these. Went to one less than a year ago. Couldn't help it. You know one of the first questions I ask? I bet y'all can guess, can't you? I said, where's his daddy? Brethren, there's not words in an elder of the church standing there with a Bible in his hand can't come up with the words. You can't fix that. Now, God's words provides what they need, but right then and there at that moment, it's awful. You can't. Daddies, 5 times less likely to commit suicide. Would you be interested? What about 32 times less likely to run away from home? How about 20 times less likely to have behavioral disorders? 14 times less likely to commit rape because of anger. The other one is sexually related. Psychologist says anger. 9 times less likely to drop out of high school. 10 times less likely to use drugs. 9 times less likely to end up in prison. Daddies, would you be interested in finding out the secret? Here it is. Be present in the home. That's it. Because what makes up this number comes from homes the daddy's not there. I looked at a statistic the other day that I don't even have in my notes, that almost 50% of the American homes, the daddy of those children is not sleeping in that house with their children. And we wonder what's wrong. Daddies can make a tremendous difference in the future of their children. Dr. Paul Faulkner illustrated it this way. He said, have you ever seen one of those basketball games where, and when it happens, it makes an ESPN highlight, okay? They'll run it for weeks and months and sometimes years from time to time. From one end of the court to the other, long shot right at the buzzer, and it goes in and they win. How often does that happen? What about half court? Occasionally. But how often does that happen? What about if you get right under the goal? There may be somebody here or at home listening that can slam dunk it. It's the same way, gentlemen, with our children. The closer we are to our boys and our daughters, the easier it is for us to bond with them. And if we're on the back 40 on the lake fishing, I got to make that boat payment, so I've got to work all these hours, you're not with them. We might have to buy, we may not can afford this 4-bedroom. We may have to go to a 3-bedroom. Well, please do. The importance of just being there for our sons and our daughters. The most important predictor of criminal behavior, it's not race. It's not income. It's not even religious affiliation. It's the father's absence in the home. It's boys and girls who grew up without their daddies. So daddies, I say, be there. Be involved. Well, Brother Sutton, what does that look like? Guys, how often do we talk to our children? I mean, really, just sit down and talk with them. Cut that television off and just talk. You ever talk to them about God? Oh, we can talk to them about them dogs, can't we? And some of y'all may say, roll tide. Bad as that is. See, we can talk to them about football. Them Braves, boy, they made it last year. They showed everybody up. This year they're going to win the World Series. They're loaded. See, we can do that. You ever talk to them about God? You ever tell them they've got a soul? And that one day their soul is going to be either at one place or the other. What's the point, Brother Sutton? Listen, I promise you, those inmates, that young man in front of my desk, they didn't have a daddy that did that. Well, Brother Sutton, why are you so excited? Listen, I've seen it way too long. And we in the church, we can come to every service of the church. And everybody says, oh, he's so faithful. And if he's not involved in the lives of his children, he's not faithful. We sing the song, Standing on the Promises. We may just be sitting in the pews. You ever talk to them about school? Let's see your homework. Let's do this every night. What kind of grade did you get on that math test? Do you know their likes, their favorite color? You ever talk to them about their friends? You better. So many I've seen get on that junk, that crack or meth, all because who they were riding around with. Well, I thought they was pretty good people. Check them out. Jake remembers this. I think he was 6th grade. I'm not going to mention the name. He wanted to go spend the night. I just rode by. I played detective. He wanted to go spend the night with a friend. I rode by their house. And I'm not trying to judge a book by its cover. There was Pabst Blue Ribbon, Budweiser cans from here to China, up and down their driveway. Teresa was with me. She just looked at me. Her eyes was that big. I said, this ain't happening. Daddies, how much affection do you show your children? You ever hug them? Tell them you love them? Y'all see my boys are here. I tell them all the time I love them. Hug them, and I don't care who's looking. They can take a picture and blow it up at 20 by 40 and put it on hanging on their living room wall. I don't care. In Matthew 19, verses 13 through 15, Jesus had children brought to him so that he could lay his hands on them and pray for them. Daddies, you ever do that with your kids? Daily, nightly. We talk about how did Jesus bless them? Well, how did he bless them? Well, it's in the verse. He touched them. prayed for them. And us daddies need to be a blessing to our children, not just a man living in the same house as they do. Daddies, how much Bible reading do you do to your children? Daddies, how faithful are you in your attendance at all the meeting times of the church? You know, Hebrews 10:25 still says, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is. So that tells me they even had brethren back then that was missing the assemblies. They was missing. Daddies, are you there each time? Do you show your children what's important? I've had brethren tell me that ain't what that verse means. Well, what else does it mean? Not forsaking yourselves and assembling of yourselves together. I don't know what else that is what that means. Jesus said, Matthew 6:33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Listen, Jesus said, you shall love, in Matthew 22:37, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And daddies who just choose to take their family elsewhere when the church is meeting, those verses teach something different. Being faithful in our attendance. Making sure that you and your children are at all the services of the church. What about on vacation? We had one of our young ones not too long ago, maybe 10-year-old. He told his Bible class, one of our Bible class teachers, he said, we don't go to a church on vacation. God forbid. Brethren, first thing we need to find out is where we're going, where the church meets. We need to pick up, we got internet, touch it, boy, we can find out something. And if you don't know about them, I see brethren all the time. You know any faithful congregations in Orlando? And that's criticized sometimes, and I don't criticize that. I amen to that. You need to find out where they're faithful and show up there. You don't need to take your kids in there and them in there turning backflips, having a party. They need to worship. On vacation. Daddies, listen to me. You can attend every service of the church. And we're talking about leading now. We can attend every service of the church out there and go on vacation. And your children are going to know that at that moment and at that time that something else stood in the place of God when you miss those services. And I'm talking about Bible study, Sunday morning a.m., Sunday night p.m., and Wednesday night p.m. You find a faithful congregation and carry your children there. And wives need to support that. Listen, ladies, those malls will be open tomorrow. They'll still have that sale going on. You won't have to go Sunday evening. Family reunions. You ever notice what time families start family reunions? You ever notice what time? 12 o'clock. And we have the scriptural time up in Adairsville, 10 to 12. Why don't they start that thing at 1 o'clock? And listen, on my daddy's side, there was 10 of them. And mama's side, there was 10. So that means between the two, I had 18 aunts and uncles. Family, we had humongous family reunions. Listen, we'd leave services at 12, 12:15, whatever. There was always plenty of food when we got there. Matter of fact, everybody would double up and carry stuff home, and I think they still went out back and throwed some away. Fed the dogs in the neighborhood. There'll be plenty of food there to eat. You show your children what's more important, your family reunions or Jesus Christ. Leading. Gentlemen, it's us. Number one at all times. Also, what does it look like, brothers? Supporting them in certain sports. The way they dress in some sports is sinful. Stay away from that. But the ones that's not, support them. Be there for them. They catch that ball in center field on a dive. Oh, man. They think, and they may not can see you, but they can hear you. You know what that does for a young lady, if she's doing things, what that does for her? Listen, there's nobody else on this earth that can do that except you. Not even her mamas. Daddies, you ever take your daughter on a date? You ever take her out and show her how a real man's supposed to act and not act? We got any young ladies in here? These lights are bright, I can't tell. Let me throw this in for free, no extra charge. Young ladies, if that old boyfriend ever pulls up in your driveway and blows his horn, don't you go running out that door. You make him come in and sit down and look at you like Teresa used to do me 35 years ago. I had to come in. I think she was already dressed and ready. She told me later she was. But I had to come in and sit down. I had to sweat a little bit. And daddies, why don't you be cleaning that double barrel while he's sitting there, right? Cleaning that shotgun. Number 2. I got 4 points. Let me see how fast I can do this. Number 2, a father of our story was a good father because he came to Jesus for help. Did you notice in verse 14 he says, a man came to him kneeling down. Listen, gentlemen, the only time we find this man, he's on his knees in front of Jesus. It's the only time we meet him. Only time we meet him. Daddies, you're the moral leader, spiritual leader of your family, or you should be. And it's always been that way, should be. Even in colonial times, the fathers did the raising of the children so much that even child-rearing manuals were addressed to the fathers well into the 18th century. If a divorce occurred, which was rare, the general practice was to award the custody to the father. Traditionally, the father was very involved in the training and discipline of the children. He set the moral tone for the home. And isn't that the way that God always intended? When Paul said in Ephesians 6:4, you fathers, bring them up in the training. Listen, brethren, our children, me and you and our children, we have to be trained. We do. Don't do that. And then when they just flat out deny, it's discipline time. I wish my mom and daddy would have stuck me in the corner. That would have been so easy. But daddy disciplined me, and I needed it. I got to hurry. Fathers, did you know that 85% of youths in prison come from fatherless homes? Did you know that? And before I move into these statistics, I want to say this. If it even takes me an extra minute, let me say this. My cell phone's right over there. Daddies, we got to be careful with those things. When I was a kid, and when you gentlemen in here was a kid, to go and, if you wanted to go find something that we shouldn't be looking at, and I'm not suggesting that I or you, but listen, we had to go to a store, didn't we? Or over at Uncle John's house, who had those naughty magazines. We had to seek it out and find it. But you know what? There was a built-in defense mechanism. You know what it was? We might get caught. So we stayed away from it. Boy, if Daddy found that out, But not true with that. You remember the Turtle Man on television? He'd say, live action. That's what those things are. In just seconds, you can pull it up. You've heard of Victoria's Secrets? Victoria ain't got no secrets. That cell phone don't either. And that internet, if it's in your son's bedroom, please get it out. Listen, young men, 15, 16 years old with hormones flowing through his body, gentlemen, you know this. Our young boys don't need that temptation. We need to yank it out of the... We had one. It was in our living room. 85% of children with behavioral problems come from fatherless homes. 75% of children who are in drug abuse centers come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts comes from fatherless homes. 90% of runaway homeless children come from fatherless homes. 63% of youth suicide comes from fatherless homes. Fathers, do you think it's important that we be there for our children? My third point was he's a good father because he had, and I'm going to end with this, he had tenderness and compassion. Gentlemen, how tender and compassion are we with our sons and our daughters? Sometimes we teach our boys, don't cry, be tough. Listen, Jesus wept. And we can go to Luke 15 and we can read that story about the prodigal son and the father and neighbors and brethren. I suggest, to me at least, there's not a more heart. There's not a more story. If you check from Genesis to Revelation, to me, that story will just grip your heart. About a daddy, and the Bible says that he's seen him afar off. I wonder if he was looking the way that this was. He looking? Yeah, that kind of. Is that him? The Bible says he ran to him, fell on him, kissed him. And if you read this son had a prepared speech, his repentance. And he started repenting, and his daddy the father didn't even let him finish. He interrupted him, kissed him, told his servants, he said, bring the best robe, get a ring, get some sandals, kill the fatted calf. He said, my son was lost and now he's found. He said, let's eat and be merry. That's what we need. The last point I was going to make, and I was going to go to Deuteronomy Chapter 6, but we don't have time. The father of our story was a good father because of his faith in Jesus. He had faith. You see, he even asked the Lord. He said, if you, when he wanted, in Mark's account, Jesus said, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. And the father cried out, listen, with tears. He said, Lord, I believe. He said, help my unbelief. See, the father had faith, but he said, make my faith better, make it stronger. That's the kind of prayer that I need. That's the kind of prayer that you need. But gentlemen, this don't happen by accident. We got to be good fathers, and we got to lead them. Gentlemen, listen, and mamas, we got to lead them to where we want them to go. Just like that young man. And really, when I say I've asked that question 1,000 times, I probably have asked that question 1,000 times. You see a young man walking on the side of the road by himself hitchhiking, there's something because see, the police have to go out and check on those folks sometimes, see what's going on. And I always ask that question. And almost without exception, I get the same answer. Daddies, we got to be there. Because listen, if it ain't us, it's nobody. God's placed us. We're it. We're it. I hope this lesson's been beneficial to you. I know I'm probably speaking to God's best today. But let's think upon these things, Daddy. Thank you.
So be rekindled with fire from above. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Revive us again.